To another episode. And this episode is about how Hollywood has lied to us when it comes to relationships. And you see who I got with me. So that's we about to
Hi.
just jump into it because Miss Romantically Jinxed here. She gonna tell us about and we're gonna analyze about how Hollywood just lied to us.
So, I mean, honestly, this is like a allude to what we talked about at the very, very beginning when we started talking to each other.
In the famous lost episode that no one got to see because I didn't know what I was doing with Zoom yet.
And the famous lost episode of this episode is about. We talked about my all-time favorite movie, Clueless.
I'm sorry, would you like to repeat that for the people? What's your all-time favorite movie?
Clueless. Shut up!
Isn't there something about this movie that I knew that you did not know about this movie? It's based on something.
You didn't tell me.
Isn't it based on something?
I hate you so much.
I'm sorry. What's it based on?
It's based off of Jane Austen's novel Emma.
And you didn't know that at all, but it's your all-time favorite movie. Had to give you a little bit of crap. Continue though.
First of all, I did actually know that. I just forgot that I knew because we talked about it in a creative writing class I took in college. So I did know, but I forgot.
Don't believe her, y'all. Don't believe her. Don't believe her.
I forgot when we did the movie trivia. Okay, so leave me. Why you got to be? You know what? Anyway, I don't like him. I don't like him at all. So yes, next to another favorite movie, which I will not mention because he's going to make fun of me.
Yeah, and we're not going to talk about that. We're going to focus on this one thing first.
That's what I said. Next to another favorite movie, Clueless is one of my all-time favorite movies. Yes.
Okay. So, Clueless. Hollywood lying to us about relationships. Let's examine Clueless a little bit.
So for those out there who have not seen this movie, Clueless basically opens up with the main character, Cher, who is the daughter of a huge lawyer. She's
played wonderfully by Alicia Silverstone. She did a great job.
I've always loved Alicia Silverstone. And she basically is going through high school, which then she looks to be in her fucking 20s, but she's 15 in the movie.
Oh my God, they're supposed to be sophomores.
Yeah.
They are grown as fuck.
But they look like they're in their 20s.
You gotta love it. You gotta love the 90s.
Which makes the part of, with me growing up thinking, I was supposed to look somewhat like that in my teens. So that's
like, how come I don't look older? Why do I still look like a child? Because Hollywood be lying to us.
This what started that fuck up. But basically, she meets the other character who kind of pushes the plot along, which is played beautifully also by Brittany Murphy, the late, great Brittany Murphy.
Fell in love with her in this movie. I will tell you that much.
She's the one who really made me love curly hair. Like, I really loved her curly hair in this movie. And basically it's like this whole flashy, we're doing makeovers, we're talking about boys, all this shit. And ironically, dealing with an ex-stepbrother.
Now this is some shit that only exists in movies. Especially in some rich ass Beverly Hills type movies. So this whole movie is about just the high school experience of a well-to-do girl that lives in Beverly Hills. fine, right? So I guess within that life experience, you have to deal with your parents' exes, children still coming around.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, and hey, I'm not here to judge, but it's probably to still be around the money that your daddy got. So that's why he probably comes over a bunch.
Yeah, he definitely was hanging around them all the time. Also, I think didn't his character want to be a lawyer like her dad?
And also, yes, he wanted to be a lawyer as well. So he's basically mooching off the lifestyle and trying to get tips on how best to go about a law career.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, she basically uses her, as she says in the movie, her powers of persuasion to persuade her teachers from giving her like C's, B's, or whatever to full on A's in each class. And then, of course, you got,
No, go ahead. I
was going to say, and then, of course, you got the token black girl, Miss Stacey Dash, who's her best friend as Dion.
Way back before Stacey Dash lost her mind.
And then, of course, her boyfriend, Murray.
Also, wonderfully played by Donald Faison.
Yes.
But, woman in five.
I told you repeatedly not to call me woman.
Now, let's examine that. Let's think about that. So we're talking about how Hollywood lies to us when it comes to like relationships and things like that. But that is a very good depiction of a certain type of man in a relationship. That one is not completely unrealistic. It's one of the worst depictions of a black man in a relationship, which, interesting enough, why Hollywood probably chose to do it, but it's not uncommon.
Oh, I feel like I'm just going to be digging myself in a hole this whole entire time.
No, I'm just saying that's both interesting and sad because Hollywood was like, hey, let's do this. Let's put this in here because let's make the bad guy look really terrible. Like, make the black guy look terrible.
Yeah. The party scene was about the funniest scene. What did you do to your hair?
And that's just because they could only have Donald Faison in the hat for so long, and he was already losing his hair when he was young. So it would just make him look more like a non-high schooler if he just kept having his hair.
It was like these people are in their obviously in their fucking 20s, and they're playing sophomores.
That really slipped my mind. They were supposed to be in the second year of high school.
And the character Ty, that's played by Brittany Murphy, she hadn't even turned. She was 14 going on 15 in the movie, and they were supposed to be 15. Rolling with the homie.
But Hollywood lies about everything, especially ages.
Of course, but I was at a very impressionable age, and I probably shouldn't have been watching this movie at this time. I was like at least 6 or 7 when I first saw this movie.
Pretty impressionable.
Yeah. So I was fascinated when I saw Cher's clothes and the fact that she tried to drive, but she couldn't fucking drive. Clothes, the whole thing, the makeover scene, all of that shit.
Yeah, which is what this movie was supposed to do. It was supposed to, like, hey, young girls, don't you love all this stuff? Come on, enjoy this movie. Like, it did what they were setting out to do.
But I would say their language was a lot. Like, I learned a lot of vocabulary also through this movie too, because this was pretty impressive to hear at age 6 and 7.
Like
Um,
I know you're not referring to as if that wasn't. That's not the.
I don't.
That's
like
not the
you.
vocabulary you're talking about.
I don't. I
Also,
don't like.
really, did your phone just go off? Can you mute the notifications for a little
I
while,
don't want to
please?
do it. Why do you always ask me to do that? How am I supposed to do that?
This is a professional podcast, and
This
I
is
don't want to
amazing.
hurt my listeners' ears.
Whatever. I don't know how to do that on this computer, sir. Don't look at me like that. Don't look like that. Really? This is what we're doing? Really?
Back to the movie.
Jackass. Is everything okay?
Mm-hmm.
I forget what I was just saying since you said something about my
You
notification.
learned great vocabulary such as if. Is that the vocabulary?
No, that's not what I was referring to. That's not what I was referring to at all.
I know, so I wanted to know what we're talking about.
Damn, when I was trying to think of the scene where they were talking about it. What the hell was that? Are you
Aren't you supposed to be thinking of the scene? Come on.
I'm trying to think of the scene. It was the scene that Cher was showing Ty around the school, and Murray came up and basically said a monologue, but I can't remember the exact words of his monologue. I have to look that up somewhere.
So I'm thinking that you didn't really learn much vocabulary. You can't remember the words you said.
Look, nigga.
I'm just like,
you always this is why I don't like talking to you, because you always try to test me. Always trying to test somebody. Anyway, but between that monologue and Cher's, like, she does a lot of different debates. Like, this whole movie tends to come up with her debates and monologues throughout the entire thing, where she's trying to persuade people on different things, like especially when she got every other teacher to persuade the grades, but she could not get her debate teacher to change the grade. So then she decides she's going to come up with this plan.
inconceivable. You see what I did there? He was in Princess Bride, and he said inconceivable bunch.
I know. And I hate you. You hear me?
Oh goodness.
I hate you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so she decides to come up with this plan to make two of her teachers fall in love with each other, and that's how she gets them to change the grades.
Which, now that we're like really breaking this movie down, it's not really about a whole bunch. Like, the main plot of the movie isn't really, there's not a ton going on. It's like a regular week, month in the life of this girl.
Pretty much.
But when you get down to the nitty gritty of things, then you see what Hollywood both kind of did to shine a light on a certain thing, but then also misled people in another thing. So I think, like, as like a feminist empowerment movie, this movie is actually pretty good. Like, yes. The female characters are very strong. Like, they have intelligence, they have agency, and like when it comes to sex, like they don't really get shamed about their different sex lives. Like Dion and Murray haven't had sex yet, but they're thinking about it.
I was
Cher's
gonna
a
go.
virgin, and like she doesn't get like made fun of for being a virgin, except for one time where her and Brittany Murphy's character, they're actually having an argument, and she like tries to use that. She tries to use that as a sting towards her, but it's only because she's being in that situation. She's being shitty. That's the only time like her virginity is seen as like an insult. But most of the time, it's just seen as she just happens to be a virgin. And Ty has a bunch of sex, and nobody gives her shit for having sex and not really caring. So I think as a feminist movie, it's pretty good.
It was so funny because, of course, I watched it again later on as an adult, and I realized a lot of things that I didn't catch. Because when she said, "Shit, you guys, I never had straight friends before."
See, like there's some things that this movie does well, and it's
Oh,
like, and it doesn't even focus on it. You just have to like notice that
yeah.
they're doing it. It's like, oh shit. But then there's things that the movie does terribly, and that's the depiction of relationships.
Yeah, I guess. Well, it wasn't the main plot, but it was also the focus. Focus. It was part of the focus when Christian comes into the picture because Cher had been so focused on trying to get Ty together with that guy Elton, and that didn't seem to really work out. So she decided to also matchmake for herself and go out with this guy Christian, which then the movie depicts that or tries to depict that the reason he's not into Cher is because he's possibly gay, which I was like,
and I wouldn't even say that it was he's possibly gay. I would say he is gay, and it's unfortunate they played the sexual confusion thing on her part for laughs. Like it's like, oh, he's gay and she didn't know it. But I will say he wasn't like super stereotype gay, which usually is done in the 90s where he would have been over the top.
Yeah, I didn't like the fact that it was like, well, he does shop a lot, Cher, and the boy can dress. And I'm like, how does that depict him being gay?
Yeah. So like they did kind of lean on stereotypes. They lean on stereotypes as to like how come you couldn't figure this out. But it's like, come on now.
There was some funny slide in there jokes that came about, like when they first drive off, and he says, "Do you like Billie Holiday?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I love him."
Oh yeah, because she's because that and this is where we get into it. Like this is what Hollywood is unhealthy about teaching. Like, let's not show young girls, hey, lie to a guy to try to like show that this is your interest. Like, yeah, just lie to him. No, maybe being truthful and honest is more important.
She wasn't truthful at all most of the time. And when she was, it was just stumbling over different things. Obviously, that's why the movie's called Clueless. But yeah, that scene was pretty funny to me now that I watch it, because I later on, like maybe like 10, 11, I started to listen to Billie Holiday, and I was like, wait a minute.
Billie Holiday is a woman.
That's not right. That's not right.
And a lot of like, so her courtship of him is based around a lot of stereotypes and a lot of like misogynist views. Like, oh, she's like, I'll have cookies baking in the oven because it'll be nice if my house smells like I'm cooking, because a boy will like that. Like, come on. That's not how you should try to get a man. Like,
well, all of the other, things, and when it what was the one of the scenes the chocolate scene. She was like, anything that you can pay attention to your mouth is good. So she put a piece of chocolate in her mouth while he was looking.
Yeah. So now that I'm thinking about it, this movie doesn't do as much about certain relationships and the idea of romance as your other favorite movie does. We can start talking about that one. I'm fine if you want to talk about that one.
You mean Titanic?
Yes, I mean Titanic. How's this for a thought experiment? If you think about Titanic and if the roles were reversed, if if the girl was a guy and the guy was a girl, this movie gets a billion times worse. If everything else happens the same.
Oh.
Because it'd be some rich dude fucking some poor girl and then leaving her at the bottom of the fucking ocean. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that would be an interesting drawing scene.
Pay me like one of your French boys.
Yeah.
Dong just hanging out.
Pop! Just right there.
But see, and that's how you know a movie is probably gonna not do relationships well. Like if you can't swap the characters, gender swap the characters and still be okay with things that happen, the movie's probably not great when it comes to male and female interaction. And it's absolutely not.
It's not.
Because the whole go ahead, you go ahead, talk about your movie. This is your
no,
movie.
no, go ahead. I'm looking for something.
You tell me about your movie Titanic.
So it's just okay. Obviously, the main thing about the movie is that it's a tragedy because of the real life event of the Titanic ship fucking sinking.
Mm-hmm.
But the inner plot having to be with a romance between Jack and Rose is just like this. I have a thing for dramatics, okay? Jeez. Okay. It's a very intense, and honestly, only over the course of 2-3 days.
The voyage wasn't that long.
Yeah, it was only an intense romance that took place within the course of 3 days.
So. Which is the problem with Hollywood bullshit. Because real life is honestly way more boring, especially when it comes to relationships. And any relationship that is exciting in movie ways is usually either toxic or unhealthy in some way. Like, honestly. But that's what we're here to talk about, though.
I know. It's just, which is why we'll get more into that side of it when we get to mine. But as a kid, I was just really wrapped up in the intense emotions because I felt intense emotions around those ages. When I felt anger, I fucking just blow up. Sadness, same thing. So I was a very theatrical kid.
But I would say it's both a side effect of, but poor response to. Like it's a side effect of watching things. I mean, a side effect of them having to make things because to make you feel something, they have to exaggerate it. But at the same time, it's a problem because certain exaggerations when taken in by people at a young age, become unhealthy expectations.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of unhealthy expectations that gave me the onset of what is me as romantically jinxed.
And that's the thing, and that's what's really interesting, because not only Hollywood does that, hell, the porn industry does it. Like, things that you see in porn are unrealistic expectations of what might happen when you do finally have sex. Shit ain't gonna be like that. Like, ladies, the penises won't always be as big as what you see on screen.
Which, just taking the sex scene in Titanic, I mean, that was a pure showing of passion. So
yeah, and it's not as and
it was
and
very
it's not as if passion doesn't exist in real life. It does. It's just not one. It won't happen after 2 or 3 days of meeting someone. You can't be all passionate like that with somebody. Like, you might have some good sex, but let's calm it down. This guy is not the love of your life.
Well, I guess that also sets the expectation of things can happen just that quickly.
Yeah. Or thinking that if things don't happen quickly, that means, oh, it must not be real. Or if he isn't intensely into me, he's not into me at all. Like, maybe people, we have to let things build up. We have to get there.
Which is why I've had this problem for a long time. Yes.
But you're not the only person that feels that way. It's a lot of people, until we have to unlearn it, because we learned it growing up. Because if you were raised by TV, like you and I were, like most people were at like a certain like generation, a lot of us were raised by TV. Like, a lot of this new generation is raised by the internet. Like, it's just how it is. And that's why I think this whole movement with like how representation is important and context is important is actually going to be beneficial. Because if everything you see on TV is telling you that this is how it usually is, this is what you usually see, this is what relationships usually are, whether or not you want to, you're going to put that in your brain. Like, oh, okay, this is how it should be. And then when things don't meet up to that, you think something's wrong, or you think it's not real.
I got the fuck appointed all the time.
The fuck appointed? I don't know if that's a good use. That's a weird way to break up that word.
The fuck appointed.
Weird.
Literally, the fuck appointed.
Continue with what you were gonna say, please.
Anyway, but between those two movies, like, well, Cher's relationships, so to speak, weren't that intense as it was in Titanic. It was more like,
that's why I said that's why I had to move.
Yeah, she's into him, she's not into him. You know, it kind of plays around, but then there's the ultimate ending where she ends up with her ex-stepbrother.
That's just weird. Okay, so this is why now thinking about it, this is why Clueless is really interesting, because it's weird because it like used to be her stepbrother, but chances are like he wasn't married to that woman very long, and their relationship probably wasn't very intense. But the realness of that is like, it's someone that you're around a bunch, you spend a lot of time with, and you get along with very well. Like, that's actually legitimately like what a healthy relationship is. You're around this person a lot. It's all the boring stuff. Like, a lot of the boring stuff is what will make people a good couple.
Yeah, because they poked fun at each other. They sat on the couch with each other and ate food.
So you know what? Clueless might be getting a little bit redeemed right now, because that's legit.
Because all the
It's just weird as fuck that it's her ex stepbrother. On the Donald Faison monologue because it's so very important. The vocabulary.
Well, I was bringing back
you got from him.
Look, no, it's not that. I was bringing back to the point about
the few redemption things of this movie.
The vocabulary is what I was. But one of the other.
Nothing. Go ahead.
Jackass. Or just the way that they say certain things. Like, I remember Cher was talking to Amber, and apparently she had copied her outfit. She was like, "Do you prefer fashion victim or ensemble challenged?"
Well, that's what Hollywood does usually. Like, they have to give. If they want their characters to be interesting, they have to give them some sort of like quirk or thing that's unexpected from them. So like high schoolers often want to be adults and try to like act like adults. So they're like, okay, our play on this is going to be our high schoolers will have this great vocabulary that you wouldn't expect because that's what adults have.
And I found it. The exact quote. Shut up, nigga. The exact quote. Because after Dion says, "Excuse me," he says, "Excuse me, Miss Dion." She said, "Thank you. My street slang is an increasingly valid form of expression. Most feminine pronouns do have mocking, but not necessarily misogynistic undertones." I had never heard none of that shit at the age that I was watching this. So yeah, it taught me a lot of those words.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing about them doing it. And that's why I said it's kind of a good movie on like the feminist side. Like, yes, her boyfriend is that stereotypical like misogynist kind of idiot, but then at the same time she's trying to teach him, like she's trying to get him out of that, which is dope. Because like he said it wrong at first, and she's like, "Excuse me, you want to try this again?" And then he's like, "Okay, let me straighten up, let me act right." But you know, and if he's like playing a 15-year-old, you would think, okay, if this relationship works out for him, he will change his mindset. Because 15, that's pretty young. You can change your mindset.
Yeah, supposedly, hopefully. Because some people don't come out of that shit.
Just very cool.
Don't come out of that shit. But yeah, that was the point I was trying to make earlier.
I am glad you made your point. And on that note, we are going to hold off for a second here. And if you want to hear the rest of this, you got to go over to this lady's podcast because you'll get the rest of our conversation over there.